Well, thank you everyone for coming. Really excited to be here to talk to you about some quite exciting research that we've just undertaken, which I'm going to articulate to you very shortly, which kind of proves that connection drives business performance, which ultimately drives profitability. And we're going to show you how managers will be the absolute forefront of what we need to do to drive that change. So, does that work? Is that on the screen? So, who are Thomas? Thomas had 45 years worth of psychometric expertise. And what's really interesting about Thomas is he's got about 10,000 clients globally in 100 countries around the world. So it gives us, I would like to think, a little bit of gravitas when we are talking about these topics. What's really interesting, though, is we're trying to lead the way and bring humans back into the age of AI, which we think is a huge, disparate movement at the moment. And that's quite an interesting topic, and we're going to dig into that in a little more detail. So, who am I? I thought this would be useful so you could all get to know me a little bit better. As you can see, I'm a complete wallflower who doesn't like to go out and talk to anybody at all from my profile. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this, we're over at stand D12 if you want to come and explore this in more detail. But I've worked, I know I look about 12 years old, sadly, but I've worked in HR for about 17 years, specifically in the software industry. And I run the partnerships division, all the non-direct business at Thomas. So I'm going to be talking you through the program as we go. Everyone good? Everyone still with us? Awesome. So this is pretty stark reading, actually. So you're going to have to bear with us. It does get better, I promise. It will get better. But the reality of 2026 is, I thought, a useful place for us to start. I don't know about you guys, and I'm sure many of you in the room may feel this way, but everything seems really hard right now, especially in the age of AI. Change is coming quicker than ever before, and we've got fewer resources with more asks. It's constant, it's unbearable, and it's quite an interesting change of pace. And that is, in summary, disconnection. That's where all of these things, we feel disconnected from our view of work. We feel disconnected from our colleagues because we're not always in an office, and that it's all of a big thing. So I'm going to walk you through a number of stats and some quite interesting research we've completed recently. And this is one of the biggest hitting ones for me, is that 21% of employees globally are actually engaged at work. 79% just aren't, they're just floating. So how do we get those people back into the fold? It's also correlated and almost directly timed with managers burning out at record rates. You know, the World Health Organization have articulated that 12 billion days are lost due to depression and anxiety at a cost of about $1 trillion a year. It's pretty scary, that we're in this phase of life. And on top of that, when people do go into management, and a lot of people don't want to anymore, only 44% of those actually get any formal training whatsoever to actually deal with the people and the job that they're having to do. It's pretty scary. And this is the most surprising statistic for me. It's quite scary, this. 59% of employees said they'd prefer AI management over their current manager. This was a big piece of research run by Dr. Autumn Krauss at SAP, and we were in New Orleans a couple of weeks ago articulating a paper on connection, and this was one of her stats, and I just thought it was absolutely terrifying that 59% of people would prefer to talk to a robot that they don't understand and over an actual human being that they might know and hopefully will build trust. So this is compounded by a number of bits of evidence that sit underneath this topic stream, because 34% of employees claim that their manager fails to review their career progression entirely. They're just not having the conversations. So is it any wonder that there's trust eroding with managers? Employees feel disconnected, managers are overstretched, and they don't actually know how to bring people back into the fold. How do they do it? It's almost an impossible task. And it's very easy, I think, for most of us to blame the outside world because it's convenient, right? You know, the existential elements that impact all of us. We look at the economy, AI, and probably AI is at fault for one of those statistics, to be fair. And we cite constant change. But it's because people don't feel connected with their work. They don't feel psychologically safe to be able to actually go into work and have an opinion and feel like that's a safe place to do so. Like that's pretty scary. And the traditional approaches haven't worked. We've done loads and loads and loads on this topic structure. And we've had big consultancy firms try it, EY, Mercer, and nothing has actually changed. We've had engagement surveys constantly poll, pulse surveys, and we're at a worse state than ever before with disengagement in the workplace. And if I may say so, I think technology has let us down somewhat. I've spent 17 years selling HR platforms to people. And in reality, when I started at Thomas just under a year ago, it's quite interesting to look at them and realize that they're great historians. They hold a lot of data, but they're very weak advisors completely, right? They don't actually know much about the individuals that they hold within. And so I know that's a bit of an inflammatory statement, but we don't know much about our people. Yes, we might know that they've had a salary uplift or they know their performance score, but how do you intrinsically know how that person wants to be communicated to or how they would like to learn? Like, we don't know that data, and everyone just gets shoved through the same funnel. You do everything the same way. And how can a manager tailor that and experience that? It's so difficult, and it's therefore more difficult to build that trust. So that's all the grim bits. I promise I won't be so dour the whole presentation. But how do we resolve it? Well, this is quite an interesting topic, and I probably shouldn't poke my head above the parapet at the Engage event and talk about something called connection, which is something we've done a lot of research into and something I'm going to talk to you about in more detail. But connection is the cause that drives engagement. We know that engagement is a lag measure of connection, which is an upstream measure. Disconnection is absolutely manifest across the world. And what Thomas does is we provided and created the world's first connection measure, where you can actually measure disconnection in a workplace. And I'm going to focus in on three of the key elements that you can see here. So we've got trust, belonging, and appreciation, because we've just released some research on the next slide, which I think you'll all find quite interesting, where we can actually categorically prove that better connected organizations have better profitability and better performance. So in that analysis, 170 of the FTSE 500 examined organizational connection factors. And the top 25% connected organizations had an annual compound annual growth rate of nearly 5%. Comparatively, the lowest 25% actually had negative growth, 3.9% of the year. It's an 8.8% differential. That's huge in terms of the FTSE 500. And what was really interesting when we dug into the research, not just looking at overall connection scores, but honing in on belonging, appreciation, and trust, those were found to be the critical factors when connection was involved. And therefore, we can prove that connection drives performance, which drives profitability. My favorite stat on here, though, to bring it back to the manager, is the little boosters on the right-hand side of your screen. Colleagues and direct line managers are the biggest boosters to performance in an organization. They will make the difference. That is the research. And therefore, managers are the best possible chance we have got to drive connection into the organization. We now know that connection drives performance, which drives profitability. And therefore, we've got to help these people out. We've got to. So how do we support them? Because it's all well and good me standing on stage and trying to articulate this, but we wanted to leave you guys some practical things that we've kind of been thinking about. And ultimately, these three kind of sentences are how I feel and how the company feels that we get people back into the fold. So right insight for the right person in the right moment. Easier said than done though, isn't it? It's very difficult to actually get that, especially with the technology that we currently have today. And what do you do? Well, first and foremost, my favorite of the slides, I'm going to get you to, by show of hands, if you don't mind engaging me for 2 minutes. How many of you, by a show of hands, would love to come onto this stage and receive an award, get a huge round of applause, videos and photos taken? Me. How many wouldn't? Okay, there you go. How many of you would prefer to go back to school and learn everything about your job through someone orating and just talking at you for the next, 20 days? No one? Why do we still have that system then? Bizarre. Anyway, how many of you would prefer to go onto YouTube and learn something for yourself or actually practically do something? You're kind of proving my point, right? Everybody wants something slightly different because it's their own preference. So why do we have technology that just services the one straight line because it's easy for them, right? That's ultimately what we're saying. It's easier for them. So unless we actually know the person, we actually can't make and affect that change. And this little pathway is quite interesting because once you do know, then you know the gaps, so we can find the right people. Then we get better connected, and then we optimize that talent contribution to drive performance and profitability over the course of time. So we need to support managers though, because we've just, I think, agreed that managers are at the forefront of this, right? We know from the research that managers can have the biggest impact. And so we need to optimize the current technologies we have. Embedding connection intelligence data, we need to bring humans back into AI. It's going way too far and people feel like it knows them because it's conversational, but it doesn't know anything about you. It really doesn't. Like, it will take some sentiment analysis and things, but intrinsically it doesn't understand you as a human being. So that's what's so scary about that 59% stat, is that you're talking to an inhumane robot in the middle of nowhere. It's absolutely mad. And what we think is the next big step for HR is hyper-personalization at scale. Because as a manager, wouldn't it be wonderful if you had a new starter joining and their onboarding program was hyper-personalized to the individual joining, so that their communication style was taken in, their learning preferences were taken in? That's what we need to be able to support managers with, to take some of it off their plate, because we already know they're really stretched. And that will mean, hopefully, that stat will reverse, that 59%. I've got a bit in my teeth about this, as you can probably tell. But managers intrinsically will start to understand the employee better. If they take the CXI data that we can provide, add it into the flow of work, they will start to understand that individual in more detail. And we therefore know that engagement scores drive up because connection is going up with the employees, trust increases, and then in turn, that's going to improve overall appreciation and therefore connection, performance, profitability. And I'm going to bang on those three, but that's really what we want to help achieve. The opportunity, therefore, for the organization is pretty huge. This is some research that we completed. And employees, if we do those things and we walk up that pathway with them, employees are going to be 21% more productive. Teams are going to be 25% more productive. And just to pull out my favorite stat on this slide, which is people stay longer. 56% of the reason someone chooses to leave an organization is down to disconnection. Over half of their entire choice. It's not salary, it's not working hours, it's the fact that they feel disconnected and therefore they don't buy into the vision and don't want to be at that place of work. It's huge. So we can solve some of that and we can support managers to actually get them into the fold. I'm going to leave you there very briefly. I can open up some questions, but if you would like to have a bit of a play with this, the QR code is on the screen. This will help you just get to know yourself a little bit better. It's a light program of what Thomas offers, of course, but it's good fun. It gets you to know yourself a little bit more. I am going to turn around at this point. Am I energy? I knew I was energy. And we've got some little stickers and stuff if you want to go and play the game. If you want something more in depth, we've got the connection booth over at our stand as well at D12, and Maria's going to hand out, if you wave, Maria, hand out some bits on this as well, so you can get a little taste of how you get to know yourself better and therefore how you can connect with your peers.